welcome to episode 4 of the BeamG podcast. So, what can we talk about today? Well, how about the 4 components of story? Whichever the media, whatever the genre, a story cannot exist without, well, at least 4 integral components, which come about whether an author likes it or not. And these are characters, plot, and style, or shall we say language, and meaning. Okay, we could add more story elements to the list. For instance, we will see that there is no story which has no backstory, but we'll do a whole episode on that. Furthermore, since characters act within a time and a place, there's always a story world. And in order to make the audience understand all this, there's always some measure of exposition. But the core is always character. It is impossible to develop a story with no characters. Whether these are human or animal or vegetable or mineral is another matter, but someone or something has to do things. The things that the characters do, the sum total of the actions performed, automatically form the plot. Even if there is no composition behind these actions, events of some sort will definitely take place. There's always a plot of some sort. The interplay of characters and plot constitute dramaturgy, and that is what we like to focus on at BeamG and what we'll talk about most in this podcast series. And trust us, that's plenty of material. There's much to learn about just these 2 vital aspects of story, characters and plot, even for experienced storytellers. Well, some people will say it's all about the execution. Yes, some practitioners do believe that it's much more about how you do it than about what it is that you're telling. Yes, the way you tell it is incredibly important in determining how the finished work will be received. So the other 2 components of story, style or language, and meaning are equally vital, and no author should neglect them. However, characters and plot are the foundation of any story, and getting them right is the groundwork for any author who wishes to be successful, in whichever sense of the word successful. Work on characters and plot is work on story structure, on the what of your story. To a large extent, language and style, and yes, even meaning, has to do with the execution, with the way that you tell your story, rather than with the what and who of your plot. As an example, consider Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. Its controversial content would likely be schlock at best in the hands of a lesser author. But the astonishing beauty of the language and its highly indirect style helps the novel resonate with meaning way beyond what the story seems on the surface to be about. The novel is considered literature and high art because of its language and its multifarious layers of meaning. Nonetheless, structurally it is fantastic too. Language and style, just a few more words on that. There are techniques and tricks to language and style, but that's not what we're going to be talking about. We would not presume to suggest you keep your sentences or your average word length short or long. There are tools out there to help writers write text in the way that you want, and other tools that can analyze your text for readability and that kind of thing. And furthermore, industry standard formatting is also not covered in our podcast, nor is finding an agent or getting published. What we like to talk about is what the text conveys and not the text itself. A couple of words on meaning. Meaning, of course, is a broad term for something very hard to pinpoint. So this podcast will not help you much when it comes to differentiating between commercial versus supposedly more meaningful literary fiction. We aren't concerned really with terms such as mainstream versus arthouse. Dramaturgy is equally important, wherever in any such spectrum a story may be positioned. What we will point out here for today is typical of commercial or mainstream stories is that the audience is not made to work as hard. Much literary or art house fiction is that because it is less direct, less obvious in meaning. It makes the audience work harder in that it poses more riddles. Rather than saying everything there is to know about the story or a scene outright, the author may veil what is actually going on, giving hints and pointers rather than spelling things out. Mainstream is easy to consume. Art challenges the audience to understand. So art house and literature encodes stories and plot events more than commercial mainstream fiction might. Nonetheless, dramaturgy, the crafting of narrative, is no less relevant for such encoded stories. In novels like Lolita, the structure of the story, i.e. what the characters do when and why, is consciously composed rather than left to chance. It is the conscious and deliberate composition of dramatic narrative that we will be talking about most in this podcast. For today, thanks.